Hi, class. Today or in this recording, we're going to talk about how bones can grow and remodel throughout the lifespan of the individual. We've already talked about bone development in the previous recording and red bone marrow and yellow bone marrow tissue. In this recording, we're going to talk about how bones can grow longer and how bones can grow wider. So first, let's talk about the elongation of the bone. When we think of the epiphyseal plate, that epiphyseal plate is going to be a section of cartilage that is going to be separating the diaphysis from the epiphyses of the bone. To back up a couple slides here, or to go forward a slide here, I should say, we can see we have an epiphyse, here we have a diaphysis, and then in between the two, there's some hyaline cartilage. That is the epiphyseal plate, or a section of hyaline cartilage. And this epiphyseal plate is going to be playing a tug of war with the ossification. We're going to have more and more hyaline cartilage generating. That hyaline cartilage is going to be slowly turned into bone tissue, and this process is kind of like a race. As more hyaline cartilage grows, that ossification center follows or traces it as it's growing. So we'll have cartilage forming, and as more and more cartilage forms, we'll have bone tissue advancing into previously formed cartilage. So you can think of it as a race. The cartilage and the bone tissue are racing towards the diaphysis. Eventually, we're going to get to the point where the bone tissue or the ossification center consumes all of the hyaline cartilage. And at that point in time, the bone is no longer going to increase in length. We're also going to have interstitial growth. Interstitial growth can be bone growth from within. So when we think of this elongation of the bone, this is growth from within the bone. This is interstitial growth. So the growth of the elongation of the bone happens at the epiphyseal plate. When that hyaline cartilage of the epiphyseal plate is replaced with bone tissue, it's now going to be referred to as the epiphyseal line. And at that point, we no longer are growing taller. Some people, though, have their epiphyseal plates fuse prematurely, so they stop growing taller earlier than most individuals in the population. A common name for this is dwarfism. There are two forms of dwarfism. One is going to be related to a hormonal issue. The other one is going to be related to a cartilage growth issue. So if we have achondroplastic dwarfism, let's stop for a moment. Look at this word. This is kind of a $10 word right here. Plastic can be referred to as a growth or tissue remodeling. What tissue? Chondro means cartilage, and then that prefix a means without. So without cartilage growth dwarfism is one way you can think of. So without my mouse is freaking out on me here. Without cartilage growth dwarfism. So the epiphyseal line has a hard time expanding and prematurely fuses into an epiphyseal plate. These individuals are going to stop growing taller early on in their childhood, and they are, well, understandably, rather short. This is achondroplastic dwarfism is related to a spontaneous mutation. It is a dominant mutation. So if they are a homozygous, or excuse me, a heterozygote for this mutation, it's still going to manifest itself. Another one is going to be, or another form of dwarfism is pituitary dwarfism. It's going to be related to a lack of growth hormone, sometimes referred to as human growth hormone. So if you see the abbreviation HGH, that's typically going to stand for human growth hormone within the context of physiology. And in this individual situation, the individual is just short but has normal proportions. So as we look at this person over here, this person is going to be someone who has achondroplastic dwarfism because they don't have normal proportions. So if we look at their body, they had the appositional growth. You can see that their broadness of their shoulders is comparable to the adult who does not have dwarfism. What the thing that is different about this individual is the height. That is not comparable. So we can look at this phenotype and know that there was achondroplastic dwarfism and not necessarily pituitary dwarfism. As our bones are growing wider, that is known as appositional growth. And this widening of our bone can occur throughout our entire lifetime. One of the things that's encouraging about this growth that occurs at the surface of our bones is that it is continual. It does not stop. And if you ever want to upregulate this, you can. There are things you can do to make it so that you can have more appositional growth. In particular, if you have more resistance training or if you have more stress placed on your bone, you can cause those osteoblasts that are located just on the inside of the periosteum to have more compact bone tissue deposited. And that's going to cause multiple layers to be laid down parallel to the surface of the bone. Those are called sometimes the pericentric lamella or the perimeter lamella. Other times they're referred to as the circumferential lamella. These lamella are going to not be the traditional lamella that are going to be in the bullseye of an osteon, but instead are going to go all the way around the perimeter of the perimeter of the bone. During appositional growth, we can occasionally have osteoclasts, bone-destroying cells within the endosteum on the inside of the bone, enlarging the marrow cavity. This is a natural, healthy process as we grow. When we are fully grown adults and we have appositional growth, typically that appositional growth is going to be the periosteum depositing osteoid tissue, and as we lose bone mass, it will be oftentimes the osteoclast of the endosteum, increasing the marrow cavity. Throughout our lifetime, we're going to have this tug of war between the osteoclasts and the osteoblasts. So we're going to be constantly building and destroying our bones. Every single day, we do this just a little bit. In a given year, we remodel about 10% of our skeleton in a given year. What does this mean for us? This means that every 10 years, we have a new skeleton, about. So I have all kinds of microfractures. A lot of us are going to remodel our bones in response to calcium and phosphorus homeostasis, or in response to the use and disuse of our bones. There's an individual who came up with the law of bone remodeling. This is known as Wolff's Law of Bone Remodeling. And the idea behind this concept is that bones are going to respond to stresses, respond to environmental stressors. So if we have lots of physical exertion, physical activity, we're going to up-regulate appositional growth. Also, we are going to have bony processes grow larger in responses to mechanical stresses. So in lab, there are many bony processes that you've been asked to note. The tibial tuberosity, the greater trochanter, the lateral epicondyle of the femur, many bony processes that we're asking you to know in lab. These bony processes are going to be growing in response to mechanical stresses. Just a few months ago, I read a very interesting article about a young individual who spent so much time hunched over his cell phone screen that he had a bony process grow out of his occipital bone, and it looked like he had a horn growing out of the bottom of his head in response to being hunched over his cell phone so many hours every single day. As we look at bone tissue or our osseous tissue, there's some very interesting physiology associated with it. We need to maintain and promote the development of this tissue throughout our lifespans. It is metabolically active. It's going to continually have chemical reactions. And the chemical reactions, the metabolism of this tissue, in particular, we're going to be interested with calcium ions, because this calcium that's present in the bone tissue is going to influence the electrical activity of many of our other tissue types. In particular, we use calcium to trigger the release of neurotransmitters or to trigger the contraction of muscles. So calcium is going to be very important for both. Oh, I lost my little pointer. There it is. Very important for both nervous tissues and for muscular tissues. In our next recording, we'll pick up on the physiology of calcium homeostasis. Hopefully this was beneficial for you. I hope you, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Happy studies.